Content warning. The following video contains material that may be harmful or traumatizing to some audiences. Video contains strong sexual content and imagery.
Do you have a passion for passion? Stick around for the first of 2 episodes featuring sex expert Susan Bratton.
Hi, I'm Dennis Vandergast. Join me in a series of entertaining and interesting conversations with entertaining and interesting people. We'll explore various aspects of the human experience and what makes life more fun. This is Uncommon Convos.
Welcome to Uncommon Convos. I'm your host, Dennis Vandergast, and before I introduce today's guest, I'd like to remind you that if you haven't done so, please subscribe to Uncommon Convos on your favorite podcast platform. Leave us some ratings, reviews. It's quick, it's easy, it's free. And by doing so, you'll be notified every time a new episode is available. I also want to thank our sponsor, Vandergast Law. If you're injured on the job or due to the wrongdoing of another, Vandergast Law would be honored to help. So Susan Bratton is the trusted hot sex advisor to millions of people. She's a best-selling author, a speaker, and a successful entrepreneur. She has made hundreds of appearances on television, radio, podcasts, and in-person events around the world, teaching people how to have fulfilling sex. She's the co-founder and CEO of 2 corporations, Personal Life Media, Inc., which publishes heart-connected lovemaking techniques and bedroom communication skills, and the 20 LLC, a manufacturer of organic and botanical supplements that enhance sexual vitality. Susan, thank you so much for being here.
We did it, Dennis. We did it. We're together, and we're doing a double header.
That's right. It took us a while to get here, but we finally did.
We were committed to doing this. I've been so excited to do this with you. I love the topics you want to talk about.
I do too. And, speaking of the topics, there were obviously so many things that in the breadth and width of what you do and talk about and write about that we could have discussed, that I want to make sure our audience understands that we are doing a double header. We've got a couple of episodes, and I know that even with a couple of episodes, it's not going to cover nearly one iota of what we could be discussing. So I guess as a starting point, and to paraphrase an old pickup line, what's a nice girl like you doing in a field like this? How'd you get started? How'd you get this passion for passion, Susan?
I know, isn't that so great? My passion is passion.
Well, I love that.
I get to run a couple of multi-million-dollar businesses, so it worked out well for me. And I do them with my husband, both Personal Life Media and the 20. Personal Life Media is a publishing company, and we publish my work. I've authored over 35 books and programs, as well as the work of others. And we have this supplement company that has supplements that support your sexuality. Mm-hmm. And they really work hand in glove, because over the last 15 years, this month, right now, Dennis, is my 15th anniversary of our first company, Personal Life Media, which is also an owner of the Better Lover brand and the Steamy Sex Ed brand. So we have a couple of things. And this all came out of my own, of course, your greatest wound becomes your greatest gift. It came out of our marital strife. And I do want to tell that story because I think so many people can relate to it. And what I've learned over the last 15 years is that your sexuality is a 3-legged stool. There's actually knowing techniques. I mean, we can procreate pretty much without an instruction guide. We can figure out what goes in what to make the baby. But once we're done with that, the only kind of sex education we get is abstinence, or you're going to get pregnant, you're going to get STD. It's all fear-based. Sure. And then we have shame shame from partners, shame from our community, shame from our culture. We have a lot of trauma due to shame and lack of information. And so what happens is we end up as adults and we get married usually. And I would say that my brand is very much the heterosexual monogamous couple who hits about 40 or 50 or 60 years old, and it's usually the 40s, especially for men and women right now, where in your 20s you've had the novelty. Oh, sex is fun. You don't know what you don't know. By your 30s, you're so busy building your career and your family that when you get to your 40s, you begin to sense your own mortality, and you realize that, and this is not everyone, Dennis, this is what I think is so interesting. Only about 15% of, you take 100 people, 10 to 15% of them are people who have a personal growth mindset and for whom their sexuality is important enough for them to be open to the idea that they might be able to learn something to improve it. So that small percentage of people hits their 40s and says, what can we do to make it better? It's not good. It's not as satisfying. And I feel like I'm hitting this place where I'm like, use it or lose it.
Sure.
And most people don't even think they're going to be having hot sex in their 60s. I'm 60 years old and I'm having the hottest sex of my life. I've got the best orgasmic function of my life. I'm better in bed than I've ever been. And sex feels better than it ever has because of the three things I know, and these are the three things. And I tell everyone all of them, so don't worry. The first one is actual technical skill in the bedroom, understanding our anatomy and how to pleasure a partner and how to be pleasured and sustain the sensation of pleasure and expand the sensation of pleasure and have the 20 different types of orgasms that the male and female body can have. And I have a website at betterlover.com, and I just dropped a new video series that explains the 3 different kinds of orgasms you can have, and then the 20 different types that there are within those 3. And you go to Better Lover and you can watch those videos and like, what are the 20? I only have one, right? So, we're not gonna be able to go into all the rat holes today. So I'm just gonna keep giving you places to go so that whenever you hear something interesting, you'll be like, that's the thing I wanna check out.
Sure.
So we've got
yeah. I'm sorry, Susan,
That's okay.
but before you go too much further, I want to mention because you mentioned the 10 to 15% that are willing to kind of explore things, and I suspect that a lot of the people who are listening in and or watching are within that 10 to 15%, and they're going to want to check out everything that you are talking about.
Yeah.
Also want to mention, if you are one of the persons who are listening on the podcast, you may also want to check out the video, because Susan just mentioned that she's 60 and how great her sex life is and all that. You also have to take a look at this woman. She doesn't look 60. So I just want to make sure people check out the video version as well. So go to Uncommon Convos to check out the .com to check out the video version. So anyway, I didn't want to interrupt, but yeah, we were talking about the 3 things.
Yes.
So
the 3-legged stool.
Yes.
So number 1 is knowing technique, and orgasms and pleasure is really a learnable skill, and you're not born knowing it, and you might have a couple of good things. But an example of one of the products that I've been wildly successful with is a product called and I'll send this to you, Dennis, no problem. And you don't have to have the DVDs unless you have a DVD player. I also have digital HD, but a lot of people live in remote areas where they really don't get broadband. Right. And so people still use DVDs. But anyway, the Steamy Sex Ed video collection, just as one example of the 20 or more programs that I've published. This is a series of 8 videos that teach sensual massage, erotic massage, oral pleasuring, love-making techniques, love-making positions. And I made it for couples to watch together. And I call this the antidote to pornography. It shows 200 heart-connected, passionate, love-making techniques. These are actual hands-on pleasuring skills. And I really think that this kind of thing when you watch it with your partner and you say, oh, that looks good to me. Oh my God, I never thought of that. Oh my God, I never thought of that. Wow, that looks fantastic. Oh, I'd love to do that to you. Or you lay your partner down and you put on the video, you put on your own music, and you just do to them what is being shown and tell them what you're doing to them as you're doing it, like the sensual massage. It's an incredibly expansive experience. So just even something like this makes a huge difference for people in learning good technique. So technique is one thing, but technique is not going to get you anywhere without, I bet you could guess it, communication.
Sure.
So one of the things that I did was I started teaching communication techniques, even just the language of how you want to be touched, the way you like to be touched. I mean, some people like the lightest little tickling, barely touching. And if you did that to another person, they'd be like, oh, that's like, ew, that feels so tentative and I don't like it. I want it strong. I want you to grab me and hug me and squeeze me. And then I have this funny little thing. I have this ridiculous little kitty cat. And I always use this because I say sometimes this kitty cat has on this big lion's mane, right? It's like it's a kitty cat pretending to be a lion. And I say sometimes you're a lion or a tiger, and sometimes you're just a little kitty cat. Watch, I can take her little kitty cat thing off, and sometimes you're just a little kitty cat. And we're different every day. In every moment, our bodies want something different. So that's a very important piece of things, is to be able to communicate in the moment what you and your partner need. And here's the rub, if you will. I like to drop as many sexual innuendos as I possibly can in a podcast.
And I appreciate that. I'm sure the audience does as well.
I love you, Dennis. You're so much fun. We knew we were going to have a good time.
Absolutely, yeah.
So what I always say is that women are really afraid to hurt their male partner's feelings by giving them feedback and corrections, because what guys want most in the world is to do a perfect job and be respected for their excellent work. And so that holds women back from saying what they need. So I have a technique which I will give your viewers and listeners for free. It actually comes from, I'm so show and tell, aren't I?
I love it.
This is one of my most popular books. It's called Sexual Soulmates, The 6 Essentials for Connected Sex. And after helping millions of people over 15 years, I can tell you the 6 big drivers that will make a huge change in how satisfying your intimate and physical connections are with your partner. And one of them is this Sexual Soulmate Pact. And I pulled it out of the book and I give it away for free at Sexual Soulmate Pact, P-A-C-T, like an agreement. And essentially what it does is it overcomes that issue, to the 2 big issues, which are, I don't know what I want, but I know what I'm getting isn't it. And I'm afraid to say anything because I don't want to hurt my partner's feelings. This agreement gets rid of both of those problems. It's super ninja and it fixes things. So you've got your skills, you've got your communication techniques, and then you've got number 3, which is the best lovers are in their 60s. So Dennis, you've got the next decade to look forward to. You're not even good yet. You're only 59. You're not even close. You've got the best sex of your life ahead of you, man.
It gets better when you're 69, right?
Yes, exactly.
Come on, I mean, we're talking about the innuendos I had to give, since you're giving them too.
You must do it. I want them all. But what's great about it is the third leg of that stool of a solid, satisfying sex life is sexual biohacking, which we're going to talk about in the next episode. And that is that as we age, we run into these issues of, whether it's for women, lack of lubrication or painful sex or low desire, or for men, it can be low desire, it can be difficulty achieving climax, loss of sensation, erectile dysfunction, prostate and urinary issues. I mean, there's a lot, or just boredom with your partner. This is very high up for all people across the gender spectrum, which is who I serve. We're either born XX or XY, so we either have, the penis package or the vulva package. But gender expression is a moving target in this day and age as well. So couples are really experiencing much more what I would call switchiness, where women are becoming more confident and dominant. Except that there are a lot of women for whom they're very shy, they're very reticent, they don't initiate sex, and their partners get super frustrated because they feel like they're not wanted. And for that, I have a program that's been very successful for me, one of my own, called Revive Her Drive. So if you're listening and you're of the masculine persuasion and you wish your wife would initiate sex more like she maybe did when you first got married, that's a good program for you. So I really try to cover the bases, but those are the three legs of the stool. And what happened with my husband and I 17 years ago, 18 years ago, 19 years ago, something, we celebrate 30 years together this year. So we've been married for a long time, and our sex life has never been better, which is great because once you're standing on that stool, you get into the draft of what I call the upward pleasure spiral. Your sex life gets better and better and better because you're talking, you're communicating, you've got good skills, and your genitals work. You kind of got to have all those things. But it wasn't always like that for me. I remember for all intents and purposes, my husband and I looked like we had the most amazing marriage of any two people in the world. We were successful Silicon Valley couple. He was an internet entrepreneur. I was an internet entrepreneur. We lived in a mansion in Silicon Valley overlooking Facebook and Apple and Google. And even before many of these companies came to rise, and we had a beautiful little girl, and we drove gorgeous cars, and we were a handsome couple, and we were well educated. We just had everything going for us. But the secret shame was that our sex life had fallen apart after a decade of being married. I was giving him mercy sex. And I remember standing at the threshold of our front door, of our giant mansion front door, looking at my husband driving away in our SUV, while our little girl, stood there at 6 years old with her little blankie in her hand. It had this little satin edging, and she used to like to rub that satin on her lip when she was feeling insecure. And she looked at me and she looked at Tim in his car driving away, and she said to me, "Is he still going to be my daddy?" And I thought, what the hell am I doing? What the hell am I doing? I have to fix this. Pull back in and get out of the car. We got to do something about this. My husband had ended up compensating for the fact that I didn't want to have sex with him by having a long-term relation, a couple of serial long-term affairs with married women who were in the same boat. They would meet and have sex because they weren't getting it from their partners, myself and the other husband. And I remember the best advice I got about my husband's affair was, "Honey, he's not doing it to you. He's doing it to stay with you. He loves you. He's compensating for a loss of intimacy." And I thought, okay, I've got to forgive this guy that I love, and we've got to fix our sex life. So we started doing therapy, and the first therapist said, "Well, it just wanes over time. You just kind of have to adjust as you go." We walked out and my husband said, "We're not going back to her."
Yeah, right?
And,
Tim, I'm with you.
Right? And the second one said, "Oh, Susan, you've had some trauma. Let's get that handled." And helped me work through a lot of all of the trauma that I'd had, move through that using compassion and forgiveness and acceptance and just support. And that helped. But what really helped us was, and we made a fierce commitment to solve our sexual issue. And here was the issue, Dennis. This was the actual real issue. The real issue was that intercourse for my husband always resulted in a climax. Intercourse for me never did. So I had intercourse with my husband for 11 years straight, all the time. Every time he begged for it, asked for it, worked his way into it. And I never had an orgasm from it. I could have an orgasm from my own vibrator, but it wasn't satisfying. I wasn't orgasming from intercourse. And I just didn't want to do it anymore. You can't blame me for that. Right. And he couldn't blame me for that once he understood how it wasn't satisfying for me. And then we realized, we don't know what we're doing. Let's go learn how to make love. And so we were lucky. We lived in the Silicon Valley, so we were in the San Francisco Bay Area. So we were around a lot of Tantra workshops and Human Awareness Institute. We walked on fire with Tony Robbins. I used to be the CMO for one of Tony's companies. We did a lot of like getting real, working with Brad Blanton and Tabor Shadburn on being radical, having radical honesty with each other, starting to tell the truth. Like it's not great for me. And he was crushed at first, but then he was like, let's make it great. And I don't know if you've heard this. Have you ever heard of the orgasm gap, Dennis?
I have, just because I've been following you for a while.
It's so sweet. Well, the orgasm gap is that, for your listeners and viewers, is that difference between how easy it is for a man to have an orgasm from intercourse and how difficult it is for a woman. And here's the thing that I really rail against as a sexpert, as an intimacy expert to millions. And that is that a lot of my fellow sexperts, especially the younger ones who aren't in long-term monogamous relationships, are saying, well, intercourse isn't that important. It's really all about the oral or whatever, or all about, you have to touch the clitoris, if you will. And what I realize is that they're making a grave mistake, because if you're in a heterosexual monogamous relationship with a penis owner, you better figure out how to make intercourse feel great for both of you, because it can for everyone. Orgasms are a learned skill. And once you cross the gasm chasm and you bridge that orgasm gap and you just simply learn how to have orgasms from intercourse, it changes everything. So I've really devoted a lot of my teaching and education, which, by the way, I give away for free at betterlover.com, on how to have orgasms from intercourse, penetration orgasms, how to make that happen. Because I don't think you can be in a heterosexual, monogamous, long-term, happy, sexually satisfying relationship without it. And you can literally just learn how to do it, and then your problem solved. So that's what we learned how to do. And then we went on to exploring more types of orgasmic pleasure. And that's how we built our publishing company. I had a constellation in mind of what I think are the advanced orgasmic pleasuring skills that a couple can use to both cross the gasm chasm and then go on to have all these expanded, ecstatic experiences together. So that's how I ended up starting this company with Tim. We went through such a renaissance in our relationship that we were like, we need to start a company and bring these workshops that changed not just our personal life, of our confidence and our connection to self and our connection to each other, but just how we showed up in the world. And we said, everybody needs to have access to this, but not everybody's going to spend $30,000 going to sex workshops and Tony Robbins things and doing all this personal growth. Nobody has the time or the money. So how do we put the workshops in a box and digitally deliver it? My husband is the inventor of Rhapsody, the first online music service. Now we have Sonos and Spotify and Pandora and all these different things. But he was the 1.0 guy at digitally delivering broadband content. So we were really used to content on the internet. And we said, let's create content where people, solo or coupled, can, from all over the world, of any age, can find the thing that they need in this moment, and they can learn it in the privacy of their own home. And I know one of the things we're going to talk about on part 2 is this notion, we're going to talk about it now, our erotic playdates idea.
No, that's the next one.
That's the next one. Okay, good. Yeah. You got to keep me straight. You wanted to talk about so many things. It's your job to keep me straight. But on the next one, we're going to talk about the things you can learn and the things you can do together so that you can keep having fun in the bedroom. Because if you're just having sex, it gets boring. Just having sex. And the problem is, and this is where you dudes are so lucky, because every morning you wake up and you get a nice bath of testosterone, and it makes you horny. And so you are always horny and you always want to have sex. I'm generalizing, obviously, but we women, we have testosterone. We get more testosterone from kissing you and making love to you, which is amazing. Another reason That's why the more sex you have, the more sex you want is a big part of that, is the testosterone that you get from a male-bodied partner. And if you don't have a male-bodied partner, it is fine, because it still increases your desire when you make love. The more you do it, the more you want. But what I learned, and I went back in my thinking about why our sex life went to hell in a handbasket, part of it was that I wasn't becoming satisfied, but part of it was that I was never really getting turned on enough before we had sex to completely enjoy it. So one of the key takeaways that I've learned is that men are way more ready than women. You're way ahead of us. It was funny, I just got somebody slid into my DMs on Instagram, and he said, I listened to you on another podcast and you were talking about how men are always ready to go and we need to turn around and come back and get our woman, and we need to slow down and slow down some more, and then let her catch up and get her turned on and get her genitals filled with blood, because ours fill up faster and we're ready to go faster. And he said, I slowed down and it made her go faster. She actually, it really made her come so fast by me slowing down. It was crazy. And I said, there's this old Pennsylvania Dutch term. I'm from Pennsylvania originally. And the Pennsylvania Dutch, they say, the hurrier I go, the behinder I get. Right. Which means the more you're trying to get her turned on, the less good job you're doing. It's slow. It's like making a stew. You got to warm her up real
slow and
slowly.
steady. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, slow and steady wins the race, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So that, I would say, is really one of the big things I've learned. Mm-hmm. 1, orgasms are learned skills. 2, you want something different every day. 3, having sex isn't as good as having erotic play dates and learning new things together that naturally turn into lovemaking. 4, that women's genitals need 20 to 30 minutes of consistent attention and pleasuring to get to where our male-bodied partners get within a matter of a minute or two. Right. Another thing that I learned is that people who are older make the best lovers because we have more skill. And skill, you can't replace mastery and knowledge with inexperience and exuberance.
Right? Well, practice makes perfect, right?
It does. Exactly. Yeah, so where do you want to go from here? I've been chattering.
Oh, no. Hey, I love, you're a great guest because I can just sit here and listen to you and you take us into a direction and I'm fine. But yes, there are.
Did you say a new direction?
Yeah, a nude direction.
You stepped right in that one.
That's right. But there are some questions I have. So, for instance, you've obviously got just a wealth of information at your fingertips with respect to these topics, but you're not a sex therapist or counselor or medical doctor. Where and how did you develop all of this knowledge? I mean, personal experience is a great way to come across it, but I think I've heard you mention consulting with various doctors in some of the other podcasts I've listened to you on. What are the sources where this information comes, and how can people who are listening to you or reading your books feel comfortable and confident that, hey, she knows what she's talking about?
Yeah. A couple of things. Well, I've spent the last 20 years doing everything from therapy to personal growth to sexuality workshops. I've read hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of books. I've had research partners, and I have an extremely robust long-term sex life with my husband. And I am a big believer in mentorship. Mm-hmm. When I think somebody really knows what they're doing, I go to their house and ask them a million questions. I spend a lot of time with them. I collaborate with them on programs and projects. I'm very choosy about who I have as my mentors, but I've had some unbelievable mentors. So and I've also gone to a lot of places, like I've gone to orgies and I've gone to sex parties, and I know about poly and open and monogamous, and I understand BDSM and kink, and the sexual landscape is vast and it never ends, and there's always something new, and it's actually changing very quickly in today's modern society because, number one, and unfortunately, pornography, which is primarily, if you look at mainstream pornography, it's very degrading to women. So we're under a cultural hoodwinking by the pornographic media companies who are usurping the minds of our youth and inculcating them into negative sexual stereotypes. So though we're becoming less controlled by the negative shame that comes from religion, we're becoming more under the influence of the negative programming of pornography.
That's interesting.
Young kids are masturbating to porn at 10, 11, 12, 13 years old. What's it doing to our boys? Here's the thing about it too that's interesting is and more women are consuming pornography and thinking that's how they need to act. So we're getting so far away from the heart-connected, conscious, love-making aspect of intimacy. And I'm not a psychiatrist, a psychologist, or a sex therapist, because the last thing in the world I want to do. I was talking to Erica Miley yesterday. She's another podcaster, but she's also she's a PhD psychologist, a sexual psychologist. And I said, girl, I don't know how you listen to people's sex problems all day. It would just take me down. I'm not interested in it at all. And she's like, it can be challenging. I said, what I do is the opposite. I'm the aspirational part of sexuality.
Sure.
I'm teaching you pleasuring techniques. I've written hundreds of techniques and advice that helps you enjoy sex better and have more satisfying sex. So what I do is that's why I'm a publisher of passionate lovemaking techniques. That's really at the net what I do. I'm an author, I'm a writer. And so one of the things that I also know is that, and I collaborate with a lot of doctors and medical people as well as sexperts and psychologists and therapists and people like that. But what I found is that therapists can only see so many clients. The reason I call myself intimacy expert to millions is because I've actually impacted and affected and talked to and communicated with millions of people, thousands and thousands of people a year. Because when you get on my email list and you get my sex tips newsletter, you can reply to any email with any question you have, and you get a reply back from me, which is how come I know what the 6 essentials of connected sex are to transform a mate or a date into a sexual soulmate. Because I've tested my concepts and theories and given my advice for 15 years to so many people that I have a very good idea of what makes a difference and what people need. And that's what they rely on me for, is plussing up their sex life, not fixing their traumas. That's not my business. Now, do I have some good ideas for sexual healing? Do I speak on sexual healing? I do. But I don't sit in a room and heal people's sexual traumas. I teach people how to have hot sex. And I'm damn proud of it.
and that's got to be one fun job, I'll bet. You mentioned something interesting. I kind of like to revisit a little bit.
Sure.
The idea of the porn industry adversely impacting our sexuality and actually comparing it to religion, or the kind of the shaming and the problems that can come from conservative religious views on sex.
Yes.
Is that something that you think is more of an American cultural issue, or is it worldwide, or do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's worldwide. The internet is worldwide, so it's affecting everyone. And
I'm sorry. It just seems to me that the American culture is more conservative and has this at least some kind of jaded view with respect to sexuality. It's pro male in a lot of ways as far as looking at what the roles should be. Maybe it's just my misinterpretation of things, but that's kind of how it seems from an amateur looking at the situation.
Well, I think some Scandinavian countries are a little more matriarchally emancipated, but one of my speaking platforms that I go on a lot of women's events, speak from the stage, radio shows, podcast summits, etc., focused on women, and they want to hear my opinion about the matriarchal versus the patriarchal view of sex. I explain to people that we've been under the patriarchal paradigm of sex, and that's how we've been having sex, and that the matriarchal view of sex is actually much more fun for men as well. And a big part of it goes back to that little silly thing I said earlier in our conversation, which was how, and I'm going to show a picture so we make people come watch your video.
Absolutely.
I want to show you something. This is so interesting. So I'm holding up a couple of images right now. How's that? Can you see okay?
Absolutely.
So this is a vulva. And this is what it looks like on the outside. The mons and the labia and the vestibule and the clitoris and the vagina and the urethral exit. But if you peel away the skin, this is what's underneath there. And this is all erectile tissue. So everything but the tip of the clitoris, there's a shaft, there's arms, there's legs, there's a urethral sponge and a perineal sponge. We have 3 erectile tissue systems in our vulva that wrap around our vagina. But the problem is that here's the penis and what it looks like. So here's the penis, and if you take away the covering, you get these 3 big spongy chambers inside the penis. This is the corpus cavernosum and spongiosum. They fill up using hemodynamics is blood flow, and they fill up very quickly. But if you go back to what the women's genital system looks like with its erectile tissue, it's a lot of nooks and crannies. And what I always say is you have to think about the fact that if you have a banana and you imagine a banana, and it's very easy to imagine a penis is a banana. So half of his penis sticks out of his body and half of it goes in and down toward his testicles. But all of that banana is erectile tissue. All the fruit inside that banana skin is erectile tissue. If you take all that fruit, women have the same amount of erectile tissue, but it's all these nooks and crannies around our vulva. And so what happens is it's very quick for a man to get an erection, but a woman is more like an English muffin, where you have to warm the muffin up, you have to put it in the toaster, then you have to butter it, and then the butter has to melt into the nooks and crannies. It's making me hungry.
Yeah, right?
My mouth is watering.
What for, but I mean, hungry for what is the question. But...
Exactly. I will stir your hunger in some way or another. But the thing is that process of her engorgement or blood flow takes longer. And so when he's hard and he's ready to go and penetrate her, that's what's happening. So they're not using lube. She's not getting a massage. She's not getting oral, or if she is, it's not taking into account the entire vulva. It's just clitoral tip focused. She's not getting full body touch. She's not getting being held. She's not getting verbal encouragement, verbal appreciation. Woman needs all these things to get where he already is. And if she's rushed, which often it's the woman rushing because she wants to get done because sex hasn't been that good.
Sure.
A lot of men are like, I can't get her to slow down. I can't get her to let me do that stuff. And then I'm like, all right, well, here's the whole thing you do for that. That's Revive or Drive. And another one I have called The Passion Patch, which is a very helpful little ebook. So this is the thing that I spend a lot of time explaining to people, is that engorgement and slowing down and getting a woman really filled with blood is the thing. Because if you think about it, if you have a small little bit of tissue, it's going to have a small surface area. But when it fills with blood, it's going to have a bigger surface area. A bigger surface area getting touched or stroked is going to send more signals of pleasure to the brain. So what that means is she's going to feel more pleasure and be able to cross that gasm chasm faster. So that matriarchal view of sex is what a woman needs to get into her arousal and get up her arousal ladder. I teach that a lot. How to get her up on this, into this orgasmic plane so that she can fly to the outer reaches of her orgasmic potential, which is vast.
Now, we'll probably talk more about this in the next episode, but just because we're talking about this, and I those of you who are watching can probably see me occasionally blushing as Susan's talking.
You're doing great, Dennis.
Yeah, well, and I'm going to say I'm certainly not the type that holds back when it comes to discussing sex or anything like that. I normally don't get embarrassed. I'm certainly not repressed. But there are a lot of people out there who are a bit repressed when it comes to sexuality. So when you have discussions about about how to get a woman aroused, what if one partner, whether it's the woman or the man, is kind of sexually repressed and reluctant to embrace some of these techniques that you espouse to get to the woman to breach that gasm chasm as you've mentioned? How do you get them there? How do you get that partner on board with using these techniques?
Yeah, I mentioned my program Revive Her Drive, and there are some free reports at reviveherdrive.com that will get you started. One of them is the 21 mistakes you may be making that are actually destroying your sex life. And a lot of guys are like, oh God, I'm just doing like 12 of those. So there are a lot of things that you're actually doing to shut her down. But there are 4 keys to reviving your partner's sex drive. And one of them is romance. A lot of times what happens in a relationship is that when you make advances and they are rebuffed, you feel rejected and you take on a victimhood. Men have a more attenuated emotional response to things because they don't get to have emotion as children. So they get mad, they get angry. Those are their responses, mad and angry. And so because often they've been approaching her and sex hasn't been good because she hasn't, because maybe she's been repressed or traumatized, or she's just gotten bored having intercourse because she didn't have orgasms, right? Whatever it is. For a lot of men, they think it's her, when in reality, it's just been, sex hasn't been good for her. It's been good for him. So he's like, what's wrong with her? Mm-hmm. Whoa, oh, she can't have an orgasm from intercourse. Well, I guess that she can't. And she thinks she can't and he thinks she can't because they just don't know that it's just a learned skill and they need to learn how to do it together. So going back to romancing her, women need to be loved and held and touched, and then awakening her body sensually without it being sexual. There's 4 kinds of touch. There's nurturing touch, there's healing touch, there's sensual touch, and there's sexual touch. And often a guy who's way out ahead with his testosterone is sexually touching her, grabbing her boobs, grabbing her butt, grabbing her crotch, like that's going to do anything. Right. Because that's what he wants. And so he's treating her the way he wants to be treated. He's using the golden rule, but he needs to use the platinum rule. Treat your partner the way they want to be treated. So you have to understand the woman's body. So Reviver Drive teaches him how to reawaken her sensually and get her body trusting him again that he's not just going to try to grab her for sex. And then the next piece is actually polarity, because it's surprising how many couples in today's world with us strong women are running the whole home life. We're calling all the shots. Many women are running the finances and paying all the bills. They're managing the calendars. They're in charge. And what happens is her desire for him drops unless he knows how to bring it in the bedroom. But he's stuck because if he brings it in the bedroom, it's like he's forcing her. And then that's no good. So I teach him how to manage being the masculine sexual leader that she needs behind closed doors. Giving them the things that move her emotions and move her body and get her turned on. And then he understands and begins to understand the advanced sexual mastery skills of making sure he gives her full body massage, rubbing her feet, holding her, but then yoni massage, and then how to actually touch a woman's breasts, not the way that he wants to, but the way that she needs him to, so that she relaxes and opens to him and is willing to go forward into sexuality. Basically, how to seduce her by running her a menu of small offers that he escalates. And a lot of guys say, this is too much work. And I say, it is so worth the effort. And if you bring joyful heart to it, and your loving heart and your love for your woman, and you know that what you're doing is saving her sex life and that she needs you to do these things for her, and that once you get her there, she's going to be the most appreciative, horny wife you've ever could have imagined. Like, be careful. You'll create a monster. Make sure you can handle it. And that's what I go through in Revive or Drive, is those 4 keys to revival and exactly how to do it. And basically, in that program, because I can't tell you all the answers, because the thing about that program that's different is that I show you how to build the frame of the house. And then you have to put in the drywall, pick the paint and paper, pick the finishes, because your wife is totally different than everyone else's wife, and your shared experiences are totally different. So I can show you how to do it and then give you all the options, and you've got to pick from them and go, oh, I think that one's going to work on my wife. I think she'd like that. So I give you all the ideas. This is what I do. I give people the ideas. This is the whole thing with erotic play dates. When couples get bored, the monotony of monogamy, they just literally need some ideas. And that's what's so fun. And what I do is I just come up with ideas for people. Yeah. This is what you should try. Why don't you try this? Why don't you try this? Oh, it's not that we have a bad sex life. It's that we were bored to death.
Right. You know, this is going to seem probably like a personal question, but given the nature of what we are discussing and what you do, I think it seems fair. But is there something, given the fact that you talk sex, write sex, think sex, do sex, whatever, all day long, every day, is there something exhibitionistic about that for you? Like, do you get a turn on? Is it something that stimulates your love life to be able to share this information with people?
When I first started, I mostly published the work of others until I grew into my confidence. And I can remember even having a lump in my throat when people asked me what I did. I was very shy about it. But over the years, the more that I've learned, the more that I've grown, the more that I've achieved and had all 20 kinds of orgasms myself, and gained my sexual confidence and gained my confidence and courage. My superpower is courage. It takes a lot of courage to be the person I am.
Sure.
But what I've found is that in standing in my courage and standing for your passion, when I speak about it, yes, some people feel it's edgy for them. But what I found is that people like it when you speak to them like a grown-ass grown-up. And they want to hear it. And even though it might be like, whoa, they're glad I did. And I'm a natural-born leader. I'm the CEO of both my companies. And I've always been a natural-born leader. And I've always been that person who speaks for others. So once I got comfortable talking about sex, and I felt comfortable that I was really good at it, and that I knew so much in all the research and study that I've done, that created confidence. And I am a turned-on woman. I live a turned-on life. I am a sexually expressed woman. And I stand as a model for what is possible for people. At 60 years old, having the best sex of my life, I give people hope, direction, and inspiration. And that's why it's my honor to be the person that I am. Am I right for everyone? No. There are many sexperts out there. Choose your own flavor. But if you want heart-connected, passionate lovemaking and you like this crazy, big-boobed, blonde, brassy, sexy girl, then come into my world. And if not, it's no problem at all. I'm not right for everyone, but I don't need to be. I'm very successful, very happy, very beloved by so many people that it's just an incredible, it's an honor and a privilege to have the career that I have and to be the person I show up as.
Well, Susan, there's so many things I could ask you right now, but I'm going to save it for the next episode.
Good.
Because there's no way I'm going to be able to supplement or top what you just said. I think that's a great way to go out on this episode.
Thanks,
You
Dennis.
certainly are filled with courage, and you certainly are beloved, and I can see why. I want to thank you for being with us here on this episode, and I want to make sure that as we say goodbye to the audience, that I get any and all of the websites that they should visit mentioned. So my thanks obviously to Susan. Be sure to check her out online at where, Susan? Where are the best places for folks to reach you and or get some of those wonderful books?
Well, we mentioned the Sexual Soulmate Pact at sexualsoulmatepact.com. We mentioned Revive Her Drive at reviveherdrive.com. Better Lover has hundreds of videos, including the 20 kinds of male and female orgasm and how to have penetration orgasms with intercourse and all kinds of things. And you can follow me on Instagram. It's my name, at Susan Bratton, SusanBratton. But my main website, which is All Roads Lead to Rome, if you want to know anything about all of our programs, if you want to know, you have a burning question, my search boxes on my website work great for answering your questions and finding any number of the thousands of articles I've written over the last decade. And that's at personallifemedia.com.
All right. Well, everybody check those out. I definitely have to check out the 20 orgasms. I may know one or two. I don't know. Also, everyone, please tune in next time for our second conversation with Susan, which I'm sure is going to be equally entertaining and informative, educational. Also, while you're checking out podcasts, check out Legal Squeaks, which might assist you in learning some legal and consumer news that might impact your daily life. Be sure to register, to subscribe to both of those podcasts so you can get informed whenever a new one drops. In the meantime, have a great day, be safe, and I love you all.
Yay.